So getting the usual stuff out of the way, if you do like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. We put out all sorts of Wizarding World content, and also don't forget to drop a like down below because it really does help the channel grow for me. I just want to go through some cool little behind the scenes things for you, and that is the fact that I've been working in my spare time to get stuff ready for potential live streams coming up and also a few collaborations. We have got different sequences ready, so if you have a look at this one, I've created a scene where I can be talking to you guys and also have a chat bar coming up alongside me for when we're doing the live streams that I potentially, hopefully, will be doing this coming weekend. Also, for the upcoming podcast, hopefully one should be being recorded tomorrow as of when I'm filming this. I've got this set up here, and it is repurposing the Wizarding World Weekly that's previously been on my channel into a podcast type thing, and we should have a special guest coming up at the middle of next week on a video for you guys where we're going to be discussing all things Fantastic Beasts and the Secrets of Dumbledore. So stick around, it's all getting very exciting for that. But we shall now get into this spoiler breakdown for Fantastic Beasts. So like I said, from this moment onwards, there is going to be spoilers for the movie. If that's not what you're into, then please leave now. Thank you for watching up until. So let's get into this full spoiler review of the film. I'm going to go bring up most of the important details, but I'm not going to do a real deep dive because that will be covered in the discussion that we're going to have in the Wizarding World Weekly podcast, which should hopefully come out on Wednesday. So the storyline of the movie. I am a fan of the storyline if certain elements turned out to be deliberate rather than just lazy writing. The main storyline of the film is obviously based around the election for the next leader of the Confederation of Wizards, and obviously Grindelwald's attempt to hijack that election, and Dumbledore's attempt to stop him from doing so. A vital part of the election is obviously based around this new creature, the Chilling, that we are introduced to in this film, and it is obviously going to play a vital part within the movie, which is something that I do love about this film. It is back to focusing on the Fantastic Beasts and not just the story of a Dumbledore versus Grindelwald, and it is a nice return to the original movie. Although the Chilling is no longer used to decide who is actually elected, it is used to actually influence the crowd, to show that they are pure of soul and worthy of being the next leader. So it is a very vital piece of the conflict for Dumbledore and for Grindelwald. Newt obviously is tasked to go and collect this creature from China. However, he is incepted by Credence and the other of Grindelwald's followers, and he is then beaten, and the Chilling is then taken to Grindelwald, who then instantly kills this creature and turns it into what I believe is going to be an inferior. Grindelwald's plan is then to obviously use the inferior, which he then controls, to make this creature bow to him in front of everyone so that they will believe him to be worthy of being their next leader. And obviously we then need to see what Dumbledore's counter plan is going to be. So this is the part that I'm saying that I'm hoping that the writing is deliberate and it's not just laziness to have several overlapping stories, and I do sort of swing towards the fact that it is deliberate, and I will explain that as this theory goes on. But obviously Dumbledore's plan at this moment in time is, because Grindelwald can see the future, his plan is to have no plan or several overlapping plans. Now this could be seen as lazy, but I do believe that Dumbledore potentially could have some sort of foresight, or potentially is working alongside somebody who can see the future. Maybe Cassandra Trelawney is helping him out. But we are looking at things that Dumbledore does throughout this film that actually seems to suggest that he does know what he's doing, he does have a grand plan, and it's not just, we're going to go do this, see if it works, oh no it doesn't, that's a shame, we'll do something else instead. And in the train scene, obviously, people get given different items or have already been given different items, and they are used throughout the film intentionally. So this is why I'm thinking it's not just lazy writing to say that, oh, we've got a bit of overlap in here. Maybe we can just suggest that it's, we need to have overlapping storylines because Grindelwald can see the future and it'll confuse him. So obviously, Dumbledore gives Theseus his scarf, which is obviously vital for them to escape out of the prison, and he gives Lally the book, which again is vital for them to make an escape from the German Ministry of Magic later on in the film. He gives the wand to Jacob, who obviously has to try to do the assassination attempt, and he obviously gives the suitcase to Lally, who then also has to take the suitcase and look after the suitcase for the whole film, and obviously do the replicas for later on in the film. So he seems to have a plan, and it seems to be written in a way that Dumbledore has a plan for this whole film, and everything does seem to go to what Dumbledore expects it to happen, which is a really interesting theory, and I will look into later on in the channel. But as I said, I'm swaying towards the fact this isn't lazy writing. This is actually all planned, and Dumbledore again has his master plan for the whole series. Grindelwald's plan then gets put into action when Vogel says that he is no longer a wanted man, and he is relieved of all of his crimes from the previous movies and is free to then run for the election. Vogel's an interesting character for me because I don't really know where his allegiances lie throughout most of the film, and I don't think the writing for his character was very good to portray that, but I'll get into that into the character section. When Grindelwald is then obviously absolved of all of his crimes, he is then able to run for the leader of the International Confederation of Wizards alongside the other two candidates, and this obviously then pushes him through the rest of the film, trying to convince people to vote for him and see all of his followers that are very similar minded following him and then sort of pushing him forward. During this scene, obviously Theseus sees a few of Grindelwald's followers just before the announcement is made. He then goes to arrest them but is attacked by Helmut, who then takes him away to this German prison that we see later on in the film. Dumbledore is then told by McGonagall that Grindelwald has been absolved of his crimes, and obviously he feels at this point that he needs to step in and start taking action himself, even though he can directly go against Grindelwald. So he then travels to Germany as well, and then starts to play a slightly more frontline role. He then directs the characters into the next sections of where they need to go. He tells Lally and Jacob to go and stop the assassination attempt, because obviously Valencia Santos is the biggest rival to what Grindelwald is going to be, and if he can get rid of her, he's surely going to be made the leader. So it's a plan they need to stop. Then obviously he sends Newt to go and rescue his brother, who's been captured. The scene with Lally and Jacob inside the hall I just think is shot really, really well. You can see the pain for Jacob seeing Queenie there with Grindelwald and not being able to get through to her, and obviously the scene with the magic afterwards is just absolutely glorious. The magic in this film is the best magic we've ever seen in any of the Harry Potter films, and it is just great to watch. Obviously you've got Lally again just being an absolute badass, saving the day and also saving Jacob. You also then see snippets of Queenie wanting to come back to the good side, saving Jacob by firing a few chairs at some of the other bad guys. You've also then got Grindelwald in the middle of this, not really caring at all what's going on around him and just taking it on the chin, acting as though it doesn't bother him, and again just sort of betraying this powerful leader type person, which will then bring more people to follow him. While Dumbledore is obviously in Berlin, we then get the fight scene between him and Credence, and again, it just looks fantastic. There's really cool elements of it where Dumbledore obviously uses this mirror dimension to protect all of the muggles around them, and he obviously then drops the bomb of who Aurelius Dumbledore is. And it wasn't what anyone seemed to have predicted very much. I prefer this reveal to what everyone else was speculating. I like the fact that he is a Dumbledore, but not in the same, obviously, generation of Aberforth and Albus and Ariana, and he is actually obviously Aberforth's son. I really like this reveal. I've done the maths and it does actually fit into the time frame. I think Aberforth would have been about 16 years old at the time, so that is well within the age frames that he could be obviously making a child. And obviously the family then takes this person away. They was obviously on the same boat as the Lestrangers going over to New York, and obviously was trying to get away from Godric's Hollow and from the whole scandal that this would have created before it obviously got out. I really do want to know who his mother is, and hopefully that is revealed further down the line in the next films. And also I want to know where they got the mirrors that they can communicate from, because it's really interesting that he is in communication with him. I don't know how they would have got that mirror to him. We also in this scene find out that Credence is dying, and that is the reason why the Phoenix is there, because the Phoenix can sense that he is dying. It's coming to a Dumbledore in need, but the need for him is obviously the fact that he has got this Obscurus inside him. One thing I did notice in this scene, which I will break down a bit further later on, is the fact that when Dumbledore uses the Deluminator, the light from the Deluminator seemed to push the Obscurus out of Credence. It was a really interesting shot, and I thought that potentially this could be used to try and heal him, but then the Obscurus comes straight back into him, and then we return to the normal world, not the mirror dimension, and it is just continued from there on. Dumbledore then leaves Credence and doesn't bring him back with him because he knows that Credence needs to go back to Grindelwald to then see how Grindelwald reacts to his failure and then push him more back towards the light side. So I believe, again, this is a planned moment from Dumbledore to return without Credence and let him go back and see, actually, there is a better side and I'm not on it. The sequence with the Manticores is fantastic. It is just Newt being the same Newt that we've seen throughout the whole films, understanding creatures better than he understands humans, and it is actually really quite scary and tense. And obviously when the other characters that are strung up get killed and eaten, and it's one of the most intense and sort of scary and adult themed scenes that we've seen in a Harry Potter or Fantastic Beasts film so far, and it was a really interesting turn, and I really liked it, and I liked the darker elements of it, because at the end of the day they are at war and we need to see that side of things, that there are people dying, and it's not, you know, it's magic. Things aren't going to be nice. Splinching is not a nice thing to think about, and we don't really see those types of things very much portrayed throughout many of the films, so it's nice to get the darker elements as well, especially with a lot of the fan base that grew up with the Harry Potter films being at the older age now, that they can actually watch those scenes and understand them. And obviously some of the younger generation might find them a bit disturbing, but it is nice to see the inclusion for me personally. So the next sequence is obviously around Hogwarts, and it's great to see the castle. It looked brilliant. It was really nice to see the students milling about and Lally's interaction with them, although I did find it weird there was so many students in the Great Hall when there was a Quidditch match going on, so why the whole school wasn't watching the Quidditch match I don't know, but I found that quite strange. But obviously we then get the plan for the next section, the final section of the film in Bhutan, and that is obviously to be able to use the multiple suitcases to confuse Grindelwald. One thing I do like about his plan, and again I think this is where Dumbledore's got his ultra plan in place, and that is the fact that he sort of tells Jacob not to pick up one of the suitcases. He sort of shakes his head and Jacob's like, oh okay, and then takes the next one. So then that instantly puts in his head to Newt, that's the suitcase with the chilling in it, and he instantly goes straight for that one really quickly afterwards and takes it with him to Bhutan, which then makes him believe that he's got the animals and his animals in his possession, which obviously makes it more believable when he's trying to stop people from taking his suitcase, because he genuinely believes it's his suitcase, and if he didn't, he'd probably be more likely to give the suitcase up and potentially ruin the ruse they're trying to portray. The scenes in Bhutan, the fight scenes, are just fantastic. Again, there's more magic that we don't ever see anywhere else, and it's new magic to us. I wish we got some spell names when they're casting. All of the magic is obviously non-verbal, and it's one of my pet peeves about the recent films is there's a lot of non-verbal magic. I'd like to know what the spells are, the names of the spells, so we can obviously get more information on the backstory of these spells and how they're used and what effects they have. But that gripe aside, the fight scenes are just phenomenal, and obviously the inclusion of all the additional items like the Gemino Jinx on the cakes and the Bludgers and the Golden Snitch and the Monster Book of Monsters, I think it was. I don't know any other books that sort of try and eat you, but it was just a really nice inclusion of little bits of fan service that are obviously make sense within the world and just obviously help out the gang rather than just using magic. It's just a really nice, interesting way to see it happen. We obviously get Yusuf's scene as well, with him coming back to the light side, and well, he's not really left the light side, but it's him obviously showing that his allegiance is to Dumbledore. And then obviously we get the final climax, and that is Newt thinking that his suitcase has been destroyed, and the inferior version of the Chilling bowing to Grindelwald before Credence steps forward and does what's right and says he's lying, this creature's dead, this isn't real. And then obviously Bunty comes through and saves the day and brings out the real Chilling, and it reveals obviously the fact that the rightful person to lead would potentially be Dumbledore, but again, he knows how power has corrupted him in the past, and he does not want that responsibility, so he passes it on. Just as there was twins with the babies, there's twin people that could take over, and it bows to Valencia Santos. We then have the moment of Grindelwald trying to kill Credence. Again, I don't know if this is going to be the killing charm, because it's not supposed to be blockable, so I'm thinking it could be the same spell we saw at the beginning, which could obviously, you know, cut him and damage him, and I don't really think he's going to need a killing been cursed to kill him. He's pretty much on death's door at this point, so it's obviously some sort of spell. It is green, but all the bad guys seem to use green in these films now. And obviously Aberforth steps forward as dad, protects him, and then so does Dumbledore. And this is the moment where the blood pact breaks and they are allowed to fight each other. I don't like this. This is one of my biggest pet peeves about this whole film, is it's just too simple. It's not very well thought of. We didn't go against each other, even though we was going against each other, but it wasn't with the intention of going against each other. I was just trying to protect this person. He was just trying to attack this person. So although we was going against each other, it wasn't us going against each other, and that just doesn't make sense to me. I was hoping in my head, I didn't put this in any of my theory videos or my predictions, but in my head I was sort of hoping that as the film went on and we saw that Credence was getting more and more ill and potentially dying, I was hoping that we'd have a nice moment with him and Aberforth before the final battle, and then he would use his final strength with the power of the Obscurus that we don't really know much about, and obviously it seems to be incredibly powerful and not a normal type of magic. I was hoping that he would then use his full power of his Obscurus to then disintegrate the blood pact and allow Dumbledore to be able to fight Grindelwald, and obviously it would then get around the blood pact because nobody's broken it, and it was just this unknown magic that we've never seen before, the Obscurus, that was able to go in and destroy this piece of magic. That's just my personal opinion, but like I said, this is just one of the main things about the story that I didn't really like, was how the blood pact was destroyed. However, it gave us the glorious fight scene that we see between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and the fights again just look fantastic. They are obviously very powerful wizards, and it was just really cool to see in a really nice sort of prequel and prelude to the final fight that we're going to get, obviously, that happens in 1945. Grindelwald then understands that he's beaten and leaves. He flees. He does say before he leaves, and I do like this line, it's, "I was never your enemy, not then nor now," and he looks directly at Dumbledore then. They weren't enemies. They've got different views on things, and obviously they are willing to fight to the death for those views. But obviously initially Dumbledore was with him, and it was just a nice sort of dig at Dumbledore, and I really like that, and the way that he sort of portrays the character. And in that scene he also does, when Dumbledore gets bowed to, he does sort of like a little, you know, face, and it just gives elements to the character that I really like. But yes, Grindelwald leaves, and then we get a few nice scenes with the gang on the tops of the stairs. We get a really, really nice fan service moment, and I can imagine a lot of people might not like it, but I absolutely loved it. Obviously with Credence speaking to Aberforth, and he asks him, "Did you ever think of me?" And Aberforth just says, "Always," and that's chef's kiss for me. I just love that moment. I thought it was beautiful, and it obviously the conversations they were having, and the fact that he was trying to reach out to him throughout the whole film does make me think that actually, yes, he does think about him, and he did sort of wonder what happened to him, and was obviously quite devastated. I would imagine he probably thought he died on the ship. So it's an interesting backstory that I would love to see more of, with sort of Aberforth and what happened around that time, and how he came to know about the child and that sort of thing, and I'd love them to dig deeper into that. But that moment specifically for me was just a great moment in the film. And obviously we got a few funny moments with Jacob wanting to keep his wand, and then we cut back to New York, and we see that there's the wedding with Queenie and Jacob, and they don't understand the Muggle rules, and it's a really nice scene with all of the characters together. We get to see Tina, who's obviously off being the head of the Auras in the American ministry, and we see her reunited with Newt, and their chemistry is just brilliant. Again, it's just so awkwardly perfect. I love their chemistry, and we see him and Theseus again just having nice moments together, and they're really building their relationship nicely as well. Dumbledore is obviously there, and in one of my trailer breakdowns I saw a wheel behind him, which I thought was a reflection, and I called that it was going to be a wedding. However, even though he was at a wedding at this point, I was completely wrong, because the wheel was just in the shop window, and I just thought that was quite a hilarious moment for me personally. But Dumbledore's there, obviously he doesn't attend the wedding, and he walks off ready to prepare for his now fight against Grindelwald. I think the pacing of this film was a lot better than it was in The Crimes of Grindelwald. There was a few slower moments which did sort of draw away the attention, but the slower moments were very few and far between. So I did prefer the pacing of this movie. Again, like I said, the writing, I'm swinging towards the fact that it was intentional to make it a bit all over the place, and I do like the fact that Dumbledore might have his grand plan in his head because he seems to know what's going to be happening. My main issue with the film, as I've said just previously, was the fact that the blood pact was destroyed in the way that it was destroyed, but most of the other reveals I was really happy with, and I've seen the film twice now, so I do love it, and I think it was a fantastic movie. It's the best of the three. However, again, it's not a perfect movie. Let's discuss a few of the individual elements. Let's obviously start off with the characters. So Newt is brilliant throughout this whole film. He's just typical Newt. He understands creatures better than he understands people, and his interactions with the creatures are great. His interactions with the people are getting better. The relationship with him and Theseus, I love the fact that it's getting stronger and stronger each film. His relationship with Jacob is just fantastic. Obviously Jacob chooses him to be best man, and their relationship together is just glorious. And I think the fact that Jacob is such an outsider in the world makes Newt feel less of an outsider, and I think that's why they do so well together. And I also like the fact that he wasn't in the loop for this film. He didn't know what was happening, and I like that about him, having to sort of adapt to still being Dumbledore's golden boy, but not being fully in on Dumbledore's plans. Theseus' character was brilliant. I do like him throughout this film. I think his character development is very good. The relationship again with him and Newt is just really nice and heartwarming, and seeing them get on better, but also seeing how strong and courageous he is, and the fact that obviously he's head of the Auras now, and the fact that he still doesn't understand everything, even though he's in such a high role. He still can learn things from Newt, and he's starting to understand that and accept that, and I think that's a really nice character trait that he's got and he's developing throughout these films. Obviously he's still got such a strong level of vengeance that he needs to inflict on Grindelwald, because obviously he killed Lita, and the end of the film, like one of his last lines, I think it's the dumb one, he's like, you need to promise me that you're going to stop him, because obviously that would then bring closure to his character. So there's still that underlying revenge element, which I think we're going to explore more as the films go on. So a new character is Lally, and I think she's one of my favourite characters in the whole franchise. She is absolutely brilliant. She's so powerful, she's so intelligent, she's so charismatic. The way she sort of carries the scene when she's first introduced to us, and she's got her cousins and her friends pretending to try and attack her to get Jacob's attention, and every single scene she's in where she's fighting, I think she wins. She's obviously incredibly good at charms, because she's written a charms book which is used to teach students. She's the character that we needed for the young females watching these films. I said this in my non-spoiler review. She is the Hermione character. She is the role model character. We've got Queenie, who again is portrayed weaker in my opinions. She's a bit of a sort of damsel in distress, or she sort of uses her cuteness sometimes, and it's just those sort of elements which aren't necessarily the best role model. And obviously you got Tina, again, she's in such a strong position within the Aura office, but she also is portrayed as this sort of recluse, and she's shy and retired, and it's not again the role model. And then you've got Lally now that comes through, and she's such a good role model. She's got the power element, she's got the intelligence element, and she's also just a really nice, likable character. She doesn't discriminate against Jacob. She understands other people's motives. I just absolutely love her character, and I would watch a whole series about her. Dumbledore in this film, again, just gets better and better. I think he's brilliant. He's played really well. I wasn't too sure about him initially being cast in the role, but as the films go on, his Dumbledore is now starting to really come through. His accent's a bit ropey at times, but his portrayal of Dumbledore is starting to actually flesh out the character as a whole, and you can see the influences for him from the books, and his portrayal is actually making me understand why Dumbledore is the way he is in the books. And his Dumbledore seems to blame himself for everything. He carries a lot of blame with him, and obviously he blamed himself for Grindelwald being down the path that he's in, because obviously he started Grindelwald on this path, and he obviously blames himself for Jacob getting the Cruciatus curse on him at the end, and he always blames himself for Ariana, and he wasn't the sole person to blame for a lot of these things. And even throughout the Harry Potter series as well, we see similar things to this, because he knows that Harry is a Horcrux, and he knows that Harry has got to die. But he knows for the greater good that he's got to get Harry to a point to allow him to do that. And he knows if he gets Harry to a point that Harry is happy to die, then potentially the same protections will come in. But I can imagine now the torture that it's going to be causing him from seeing how much he blames himself in these films to what we see in the Harry Potter series. The torture that it's going to be for him is going to be absolutely heartbreaking, and it just adds to the character, and his portrayal is brilliant. Aberforth is a really interesting character in this movie. We don't see much of him throughout the Harry Potter series, and he's just portrayed as a bit of a weirdo in those series and doesn't really do a lot until he comes to help out at the Battle of Hogwarts. But this sort of gives reason for him being the way he is. If he obviously has had a son that was taken away from him, he doesn't know what happened to him. He's now found out that his son's this person who's in with Grindelwald, who's also potentially dying, who's got an Obscurus, and he could have stopped all those things. This explains why he is the recluse that he is today, and why he doesn't want to have these other relationships and friendships, because every time he does, he seems to be betrayed or things seem to go wrong. And it adds really nice elements to his story, and I'm really growing of his motivations throughout everything that we see for him, and I love the portrayal of him. I think he was brilliant, and again, I just want to see more of his character. So, Mads Mikkelsen as Grindelwald is phenomenal. I think he's the best portrayal we've seen so far. Obviously, we've had 3 now throughout the movies, although one of them was in Polyjuice Potion, but it was still Grindelwald, and I just think his portrayal was just perfect. There was sort of elements of the power that he displays, the charm that he displays, his accent, his mannerisms, everything. When I picture Grindelwald, I pictured exactly what he did throughout this film. And again, we see more and more of him and why he's doing what he's doing, and actually you start to see more of the twisted, darker side of him in this film. He obviously refers to the muggles in the cafe with Dumbledore as animals, and can you smell them, and those types of things. And he's got a real deep-lying hatred for the muggles we're starting to see come forward. And again, he tries to manipulate everybody, and everything he does is a manipulation, and it's really starting to come through. And I actually think he's starting to potentially become a better character than Voldemort, because Voldemort ran everything by fear, whereas he runs things by his charm and his manipulations, and people actually want to fight for him, not because they're scared of being against him or because they want to be the higher race. They follow him because they believe in him, and that it makes a much scarier villain. Credence's story arc is a very sort of short and simple one. Obviously, he starts at the beginning of this film still wanting to know why he was abandoned and how he fits into the Dumbledore family tree, and he wants to confront the people that abandoned him and potentially kill them. And obviously, as the story progresses, he starts to learn that actually things aren't what they seem, and he isn't who he thinks he is, and Dumbledore obviously drops a reveal of who he is on him. And from that moment on, you can see his change of perspective and the way that he wants to come back and just be at peace and be at home and get out of the giant war and the conflict that he's in, and hopefully find some peace. And that is literally what his whole motivation towards the end is. There was a lot less of Credence than I thought there was going to be, and I think they could have possibly fleshed out his character a little bit more, but what we saw of him, I think, was a move in the right direction. Jacob's character in this film was so much better than any of the other films. He has only been used as a comic relief up until this point. Obviously, there was the sort of love elements in The Crimes of Grindelwald and the devastation towards him at the end, but that was the only change we got in his character. But they've gone more with the end of that film and pushed him forward as an actual character and having actual emotions and being relevant to things in this film. He's now understanding the magic around him, and he's accepting it, and he's not being surprised by everything, and he's understanding why things are the way they are, and he's just such a brave and loyal character. And I think every single thing about him just sort of portrays every single house in Hogwarts. I think that's what I love about him. He steps forward when he needs to protect Lally, or to confront Grindelwald, or to shout up against the dishonor that he sees with Grindelwald being let go, and he's always that first person to step forward and be brave. And he's also so loyal to Queenie and to Dumbledore and the people that are around him. He just wants to help them in any way that he can, and he's ambitious in the way that he wants to do this, and the way that he just goes to confront Grindelwald and thinks that he will have an impact. Obviously, the first time we see him is based around his ambition, because he's trying to start this cake shop and thinks that he will do very well in a cake business, and sort of his motivations are what pushes him throughout the storyline, and his ambitions to get Queenie back is exactly what pushes him forward throughout this whole movie. And then finally, the intelligence side of him, he is obviously learning a whole new world. Can you imagine being pulled from your normal life into this world of gods as such, the people with magic that can literally kill you by pointing a wand at you, or change the way something looks, or can walk through walls? He is understanding these things, and they aren't needing to be explained to him anymore. He's understanding them, and he sees something and he goes, right, that's that because of this, and it just makes sense to him. And I think he just symbolises everything that a wizard should strive to be in a muggle, and it's really nice obviously having a muggle main character throughout these films as well. I think his story arc through this is great. Obviously he steps forward when he needs to. Lally says to him, when he says he's just an average schmo, he's the schmo that they need, because he will absolutely sacrifice himself for anyone, and he needs to show that to other people. So Bunty is a character that I really do not like her character arc throughout this film. She doesn't have one. She starts off at the beginning, we still see that she's in love with Newt. When she introduces her, she knows the exact amount of days that she's been working for him, and she just fawns over him all the time. And obviously she's vital to the main role, which I like because we haven't seen enough of her, but she's just not progressing as a character. At the end of the movie, she has one line where she sort of says, you just know when, the person's not going to love you, and this type of thing. And it's not a development of her character, it's just a one line and that's it, and she's hopefully now over Newt. I would have preferred to have seen a scene in the final battle with her with the suitcase. As she does, she's got the chilling in the suitcase, so she knows she's got this vital role, and she can see that Newt is in danger and needs her help, and he asks her for it, and she then turns around and says no, and she moves away, and she's then moving away from Newt being this controlling point of her life to moving on to better things, and understanding that actually her whole life can't resolve around this man now. She needs to move forward and actually have it moving in a direction that helps more people and helps herself. I would love to have seen something like that, something similar to that sort of scene, rather than just having her have one throwdown at the end that shows that she's moving on. So let's talk about the creatures in these films. And again, one thing I love about this film is the creatures take centre stage again. We actually get whole scenes based around the creatures, and again, like I said, the chilling is vital to the whole movie. The Chillin, I think, is a great creature. I think it's probably one of my favourite creatures in the whole of the magical world, although obviously it does suffer from obviously the J.K. Rowlingism of just introducing it and saying, oh yeah, everyone knows about this creature, when actually we don't, and we've never heard it before. Apparently every child in the wizarding world is supposed to know what a Chillin is, and it's so vital, it's their favourite creature, and yet it's never been mentioned once. But I think as a Harry Potter fan, you have to get over these types of things. Things will be shoehorned in later on and hopefully just accepted. But this is one of those things. And I would like to see if the films ever get remade for the Harry Potter franchise, if they can obviously include some of the things earlier on, just to sort of get rid of the, oh, this is a thing now, moments that we get throughout the franchise. Obviously, we're still going to get them in these films. But the Chillin is a great character. Obviously, it can see your soul. It can show who is rightful to lead. It was initially used to actually choose a leader, whereas now it's just used to obviously influence the votes. The look of the creature is just absolutely stunning. The horns down the side, and the fur and the scales and the glow, just absolutely fantastic. And I love it, again, like I said, playing a vital role in the movie. Teddy and Pickett, fantastic in this film. They just get better every single movie. They're just glorious when they're together. The scenes with them inside the prison is just fantastic. The dynamic that they have, where Teddy obviously tries to jump up and catch other coins and Pickett thinks he's trying to save him, they are vital again to this role. Another new creature that we get is obviously the Wyvern, and I really like the design of this character, where it starts off as a small, like, bird-like creature with like bug-type wings, and it then uses like its expanding body to lift up like an air balloon, and then once it's up, it then flies, and it's like an extraction plane for Newt. And I just think it's a really clever use, and obviously Newt plans what creatures he wants to take with him because he's in a forest location. What's the best way to get out of a forest location? Float me up and fly me away. And Newt obviously picks these creatures for this reason. The creature knew exactly what it needed to do, so he's picked these creatures to come with him on these specific missions, knowing what he's going to need best to help him out. The manticores are just great. Again, that scene is just pure Newt perfection. They are also terrifying. I was starting to think of, when I was watching it actually the second time round, like, I think the manticore that's down the bottom must have had like an Engorgio charm put on it, or some sort of growing potion, because none of the other manticores seem to get that big. I don't think it's viable for them to get that big. I think it is literally just made that big for the prison as a sort of deterrent and to stop people from escaping. So I think manticores are actually going to be these sort of small type creatures, rather than the creatures that grow to this massive size. Although I could be wrong, because obviously the blasted screws grow massive as well, so it could just be the fact that these are very much babies that are running around at the top. But I do love them. I think they're a great addition, and the terror that they brought to the film was just fantastic. And finally, let's talk about the magic in this film. I've got a few annoyances about the magic, and that is the fact that obviously all the spells are like the same colours now, and they don't have their own individual colours, and it's all non-verbal. This is, I think, obviously just a sort of design point from the producers, and you know, they don't want to have characters having to shout spells over each other, and it could get a bit more chaotic. But personally, I would prefer to see them shouting the spell names out a lot more, and I would prefer spells to look like distinctive. One of my favourite things about the game obviously was going through it and seeing which spells we could pick out from the way they looked, and we don't get that in the films anymore. It's just sort of like a flash of light. There's not even like a beam, like a ball from the end of the wand to the person anymore. It's just literally point a wand, they flash, something happens to them. And that is obviously one of my main grievances with the fights, but I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. But other than that, the magic that we get in this film is better than any of the magic we've seen throughout any of the films. The forest scene, obviously with it flying through the trees, just looks incredible. The scene in Berlin with Dumbledore versus Credence, and the buildings falling apart, and Credence obviously using magic mixed with his Obscurus is just fascinating to see, and see Dumbledore just so easily deflect it. He wasn't phased at all by Credence. It just shows how powerful he is. Lally and Theseus having the fight scene in the market was great as well. They obviously used lots of different spells, and it was used in different ways. And obviously we also see their magical items coming into play. Just really great fight scenes. One of my things that I hated the most about the Harry Potter films is, my favourite book is The Order of the Phoenix, and one of the reasons why it's my favourite book is because we have the fight in the Department of Mysteries, and the fight scene in the village scene in Bhutan reminded me of what I wanted to see from the fight scene in the Department of Mysteries. You had so much chaos going on, so many different elements to the battle, and as you're reading through the book or listening to the audiobook, and you have all these elements in the Department of Mysteries, and I just wanted to see that, and they just skipped it over completely. And seeing that scene then just really made me crave for more scenes like it. And hopefully when the films get remade as a series, or more films, we get to see that scene in Department of Mystery is very similar to the scene in Bhutan, and that's the sort of magic that I want. And obviously finally leading on to Dumbledore versus Grindelwald, and the way they teleport around each other, and the spells colliding and spells ricocheting off things. It was just shot really well, and you can really see just how powerful these two are, that at any moment one of them could die, and I cannot imagine any other character standing up to them. It is just, they are a league above the others, and they really tried to show that with that fight scene. I just cannot wait to see the final duel between them, and it really gave me hope for it. So my rating from the spoiler-free breakdown was a 8 out of 10. However, I think I'm probably going to drop it down to a 7.5. And that is just because on the second viewing of going through this, I did notice, as I've said, there was a slight bit of pacing issues, and some of the elements I didn't like the way they handled them. But overall, this was a really good movie. I've not got anything to compare this to. I haven't done any, obviously, breakdowns or reviews of previous films as of yet, because none of them have come out while I've been doing this channel. But just for reference, I think that Fantastic Beasts 1 would probably be a 7.5. However, I reckon Secrets of Dumbledore is better, and I think that The Crimes of Grindelwald would probably be about a 6. So that's where they sort of come within the sort of rankings of the 3 films. I don't think I would ever put a film at a 10 rating, so it's a sort of high barrier to reach. I know these films are not perfect, but again, like I said, I think this was a very good film, and I've happily seen it twice. I would happily go and see it again. So hopefully this gives you a bit of insight. If you haven't seen the film and you're happy with the spoilers and you've watched this, maybe you should go check it out, because it was a very good film and it was an enjoyable experience, and you're not going to come away from it thinking I hated that movie. It was a very good movie. So there you have it. That was my full spoiler review. I've gone into as much detail as I can, but again, like I said, we are going to be doing a podcast this week, and we will be diving deep into elements of this film, so I didn't want to sort of ruin anything for that. But that is the spoiler review. Let me know what you thought of the film below, and obviously we can now fully discuss everything in the comments, because the embargo for spoilers has been dropped by me, and I will not be deleting any of these spoiler comments. So get involved in the comments below. Tell me what your favourite parts of the movie were, what you didn't like about it, and what your theories are for the next films. Obviously, if you want to discuss this with me further, join the Discord. We've got a few people joining it now. Obviously, I want this to grow so we can discuss all things Wizarding World and all things not Wizarding World. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then get involved. I will leave a link to the Discord in the description below, and it is also linked on my main YouTube page. So as I said at the beginning, we will be doing a live stream very soon, and it will be a short live stream initially because it will be a test live stream for me to make sure everything wants to work, and also we will be doing a Kahoot quiz. There will be 50 places available for people who want to get involved. I'll release the times of the quiz in advance if you want to get involved. I will start the live stream slightly early so that if people want to jump in and join, they can, but there will only be 50 spaces available. So if more of you join than that, unfortunately, you won't be in with a chance of winning. The winner of the collection will win one of a set of Noble Collection wands. So it is well worth you taking part. If you want to guarantee yourself a place in the quiz with a chance of winning, then consider becoming a member of the channel. There is a join button on my homepage. If you click that, it tells you what the perks are, and one of them is to get priority access to the codes. At the moment, I don't think it's going to be worth your time, but if you want to support the channel in that way, then thank you so much. I do appreciate you. But that was my full spoiler review. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. We put out all things Wizarding World. I cannot wait to see you in the next video, and until then, mischief managed.